Oh, Leslie, hi, how are you doing? I'm okay. Yeah, I made you and Dinah my Facebook cover. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna see if I can try this with speakerphone. So just hold on just a second. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, awesomeness, awesome sauce. Okay, so my first question to you is, well, you seem like a horror type of gal. And well, it depends. I don't know. I mean, I was literally born on Halloween, so oh, oh wow, how cool. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it always felt like destiny to me. Like I feel my powers growing as the seasons change. It's sort of like I feel like this mythical creature or something. Yeah. And I'm hatching out of my whatever my day mask into the night mask. Does that make sense? Um, get really started here. If my phone cuts out for some reason, the battery was really low and I didn't realize it. Yeah. I'll call you right back. Okay. Okay. Yes. um. Okay. Where were we? Yeah. Well, we were just talking about like I was, you know, like I always sort of like try to, you know, I ask myself, when I got started with horror, because a lot of people, ask me that question, right? Mm-hmm. And for a lot of the people that I know in horror, and I know a fair amount of horror authors and horror um, musicians, and I've interviewed everybody from like John Carpenter to Claudio Simonetti, and Danny Filth, like there always seems to be this sort of this element of, well, Carrie Crome, right? Carrie Crome said that she was born under a black sun, right? That's so goth, right? Yeah, yeah. And how did you like get in touch with your horror side, or is that a side of you that you identify with, or I like a lot of different kinds of films, not just horror. I mean, I love film noir. Right. I love old films. I love suspenseful films. I love I do. I think I'm pretty eclectic when it comes to most films that I like to watch. But I do, if I have a choice between a regular film and a horror, it's always going to be the horror film because I think something with horror, I think, is more suspenseful because there's this darker element to it. Is there a monster? Right. Is it going to get, slashed? Is there, and so for me, it kind of takes me away a little bit more than just a regular film. And it's hard sometimes because people are like, or friends of mine or whatever, like, why do you always want to watch horror? And it's like, well, I think they're just more suspenseful for me. Yeah. And I like the darker side of things too. I don't like just just boring new films because there's a lot of actors and actresses that I like that were from like the 30s and 40s. Oh yeah, me too. The glamorous era. Me too. And then the films like the Universal Horror when it came out, and I love Alfred Hitchcock. Oh, me too. So those are some of the kinds of films I like. I also love, I love a good comedy. So, it just depends. But I think horror is my favorite genre. Now, like speaking of comedies, because
and horror. Some of my favorite horror films are actually like, well, obviously like Return of the Living Dead, right? That they're also comedies,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
right, and even and the film De La Morte de l'Amore.
yeah.
That's one of my all-time favorites because it's so like um, tongue-in-cheek.
Uh-huh.
Like who was the actor?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, the guy, Rupert Everett.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he plays the engineer. And the opening scene of that movie, I always I love. When I first saw it, I just like cracked me up because he exists in a universe in which like having to dispatch zombies by shooting them in the head is
Mm-hmm.
is is a mundane thing. It's a regular occurrence. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's these zombie. He literally lives in a cemetery, right? And he's sort of like he seems like he's bored shitless. And then
Yeah,
the first scene is these zombies. They sort of like they're they break open his door or something like that, and he barely looks up. He just takes this pistol and he just like shoots them. And it's like,
yeah.
and it just seems like he's so bored and sort of depressed.
It's such a normal thing for him.
Yes. Yeah, and I've always liked, the concept of a local optimum, or things that
Mm-hmm.
only occur within a certain context of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that that's what I really enjoy is, especially I think that the greatest horror films have that kind of tongue-in-cheek quality. I mean, really, really obvious example is sort of like Wes Craven always had some humor in it.
Mm-hmm.
And even Dario Argento, right? Always
Oh,
has
yeah.
some those fantastic, absurd lines that make no sense, and you just wonder, you know, what kind of good drugs were they on, right?
I know.
You know, um, as far as Penis Flytrap, I don't actually know how that came about.
Well, I had been playing in a band. Uh, I was living in Hollywood and I was playing in a band called Me Diablo. And
How do you spell that?
it was MI and then DI or Diablo.
Uh-huh.
Me Diablo. Um, and we had been playing for a while and the singer came into some money and decided he wanted to go live in India.
Oh,
So
okay.
he left, and it was just the three of us then. It was me, Lucifer Fulci,
Mm-hmm.
and Hal Satan. And
Yes.
so I was playing with them in that other band.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, we were just playing with our regular names in that band.
Right.
And anyway, so I had been going into a cult store on Melrose, and
Do you remember
I
the
had
name of the store?
met Dinah Cancer at the occult. No,
That's
she
right.
had her own occult store, and it was called
Oh, okay.
Ragnarok.
So she ran do you remember the name of the store?
Yeah, Ragnarok. It's
Oh,
Norse. I
yes,
don't know.
like
Don't ask me how to spell it.
no, no, like the Nordic apocalypse, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Ragnarok. That was her store with her husband. And I had also knew some people that knew her, and we had gotten together. And I was in a coven at the time called Horned Moon,
Nice.
and we had actually circled with her group. And she and I just kind of hit it off. We were born in the same year,
Okay.
and about a month apart.
Mm-hmm.
And when we would go do something, sorry about that.
No worries.
Life. When we would go do something, we'd be singing like 70s songs and laughing,
Yeah.
and just be singing all the time, just goofy songs
Right.
and stuff. And we just really hit it off. And then when the singer of my band left, I asked her if she'd be interested in singing with us or just singing party time with us. I'd love to cover that, I said. And
Yeah.
So she came down and she sang that with us, and of course, her voice blew my mind because it's so loud. And I asked her if she'd be willing to play with us, and she said, "Yeah." And she really hadn't been doing anything because she'd been a mom,
right.
And she had little kids, and she really hadn't been playing 45 Brave or anything. And so we decided that we would continue on with this group that we had, and because of kind of like you were saying, sometimes when horror is kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of funny and campy.
Yeah.
I came up with the name Penis Flytrap because we had girls in the band, and Mary had been in another band years ago called Castration Squad.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And so it was just kind of a play on words and funny.
Yeah.
Maybe in hindsight we should have been called Venus Flytrap, but I think Penis Flytrap just made it all the more fun.
Sure.
And so that's kind of how we got started, and then we started rehearsing in Mary's garage where she lived in her house, where I guess 45 Brave used to rehearse years ago, and that just kind of started us off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you know? I was just thinking because Mary ran a occult bookstore. Did you know Fariza Balk?
I didn't know her, but I knew the occult store that she took over because I used to go in there a lot. It's called Panpipe.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I knew George, the manager of it. George used to, blanking on his last name, I'm sorry. He used to run that store, and then he kind of took over, and this other couple took over kind of managing him. I think George was kind of out then, which was a shame. But yeah, I used to go in Panpipes a lot. They had really good oils there.
Yeah.
They had good incense, but their mixed oils were really good. So I'd buy oils there, and sometimes I'd buy jewelry. They had really cool rings and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to? It's called Necromance on Melrose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Nancy. She runs it.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, I know Nancy. I used to buy from her all the time. She's really sweet. I think she moved back to New Orleans, and she still runs Necromance on Etsy.
Yeah.
Online, but oh yeah, she's a sweetheart. I really, really was sad when her store closed.
Yeah, wow.
I used to just buy tons of stuff there.
Yeah, my friend was ex-friend. Long story short, she bought a bat. Like it was a whole bat. Or I think I think actually a friend of hers bought her a bat for her birthday, and this my friend was a PA for Marilyn Manson, and it was a really long-term friendship that just got weird. But anyway,
yeah,
these things happen,
Yeah.
So what was the what were there kind of expectations of Penis Flytrap, because your Mi Diablo, I mean, was that very well known band or?
Not really. We did. I think we recorded one album, and we would just play locally, and we weren't real well known. No, not really. People that knew of us would come see us, but I think we were just kind of doing it for fun at first, but then a lot of people started to like it, and so no, we weren't well known. But I did playing in the punk scene for a long time, so I just knew a lot of people, and a lot of people would come see us. And it was Brian, the singer Brian Walsh. He was an artist, and he knew a lot of people too. So just between the two of us, a lot of people would come see us.
Right.
But we weren't real well known yet. No.
Yeah.
I was disappointed when he left because we just recorded an album.
Right. Wow. Yeah. What was so I think a lot about what, like, things like how goth is always been very much from the start. It's always been very much kind of a almost an in joke, among
Mhm.
among the practitioners, if you will,
Oh
and
yeah.
and how even like I think I told you David J. Haskins has a poem in my Burroughs book, and this like, but obviously there's this affinity. I mean, even though people of our ilk may say, well, we're not Gothic or whatever, but when it comes down to it, if we had a choice, if we
Mhm.
had our druthers, whatever, we're going to more incline to something a little bit darker because it's for me it's kind of a relief. It's sort of like getting in and
Mhm.
out of the sun.
It kind of it's interesting because I think goth kind of pokes fun at death.
Yes.
It's like let's look like with our white face and black lips. Let's look like we're dead and
Right.
kind of say that you're always so I don't know. I don't know the fear factor, like in school and being terrorized by teachers and parents and
Right.
everything. Growing up, are you going to fit in? Are you going to be able to make it in the world? And you hear a lot of fearful things they tell you when you're growing up. And I kind of think that when you're like wearing your goth makeup and you're in this kind of I don't care about death scenario.
Yeah.
That I kind of welcome it. That
Oh, interesting.
I think that it's kind of it's kind of a tongue in cheek thing. Like, don't terrorize me anymore. Here I'm just like I'm sitting in death.
I'm sitting in
And
death.
so I
Very
really
interesting.
think that being able to
I'm pre-dead.
be in that genre is really it's fun and it's also just this big poke at society. It's like, look, we don't care about death anymore. You terrorized us enough.
I'm feeling that, Leslie. I mean, I'm totally like, everything you're saying. I'm feeling that so strongly. Yeah.
Oh God, it's fun.
Wow. Um. Yeah, and that reminds me like the play-like aspects. Like when I interviewed Caroline Munro in London
Mm-hmm.
a while back, and she was, I was asking her about what it was like to act opposite, Christopher Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that it was just sort of like you play when you're a kid.
Yeah, I love him.
Oh, Christopher Lee. I mean, was it
Mm-hmm.
like tall, dark, and ghoulish or something? What was the?
Yeah, Dinah Cantor loves him too. That's
Yeah.
one of her favorites.
Wow. Yeah. You can't go wrong, and I think that as far as everybody who's played Dracula has sort of taken a little bit of, both from Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee, because you kind of can't help it, right? Like Gary Oldman.
Right, right.
Yeah. Um,
Oh yeah.
so as far as the penis flytrap characters, I enjoy sort of thinking about how, like, somebody like Bowie, for example, assembled Ziggy Stardust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's so you're different. You see of Hal Satan, Hal Satan, and you know, um, and then Lucifer Fulci was obvious,
Mm-hmm.
Lucio Fulci reference, and
Mm-hmm.
your Elvorian von Spivey. What's the Elvorian?
Well, I was in Panpipes one day,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a woman there that I was getting a tarot card reading from, and I ended up being in her coven eventually. A very older, wizened-looking woman, and she looked at me and she said, "You look Elvorian," meaning elf-like.
Oh.
And so when she said that, I thought, oh, that's interesting, Elvorian. And I kind of let it go. And then later on, I was doing working with some numerology.
Yes.
And I thought maybe I would choose more of a magical working name. And I was doing some numerology, and I brought Elvorian up, and numerologically, it really worked for me. And so I thought, well, that'll be my stage name. That'll be a great name to go by. It'll be my magic name, and it'll also be my stage name. And so that's how Elvorian came about. And then I figured because I was going to be this elfin name, that I should be somewhat of an elfin creature. Yeah. And I remember the first time I got these little pointed tips from the Hollywood toy store, you know, because they have stuff for makeup and spirit gum and all that sort of stuff. And so I bought those there, and I put them on the tips of my ears, and you know, blew them on a little bit, and then put some makeup on around them, so they looked really authentic. Right. And I said, you know, we were going to play a show, and they're like, "What are you doing?" That's my bass clarinet. I said, "I'm going to wear these ears, these elf ears," and they go, "No, you're not. You're not going to wear those on stage, are you really?" What was that? Was that with Me Diablo, or was that Lucifer? Who said that? That was both of them, kind of. It was Lucifer and Hal. They were friends too. And so they're like, "You're not going to wear that on." I go, "Yeah, I am." And so then I wore it for the first show, then I wore it for the second show, and then they were like, "Oh, all right." We didn't care anymore. But I wanted a character that looked somewhat symbolic. I was into symbols at the time, and I thought, well, elf ears, you could be Spock, you could be an alien, you could be a fairy, you can be all these things with the pointed ears, so that's symbolic. And then with the vampire fangs, I figured, well, everybody knows what those are. And then, of course, I had the mohawk, which people were like, you know, is that punk rock? Is that Indian? You know, my family's Cherokee, actually. Oh, wow. So, so I had all these different things, and for a long time, people didn't even know if I was a man or a woman. They were trying to figure me out. Which I thought was funny. Yeah. Because, I mean, off stage, I'm just like fairly normal. Right. But, well, I guess I'm not. My mom always said, you know, "Honey, you're just different." But I like different. But so that's how my character kind of came about. And then Lucifer, his character, of course, he just wanted to look more like black metal. And he at first was a little resistant about makeup, but then Mary and I were wearing the makeup. And so then he said, okay, he'll try the makeup and stuff. And we just kind of kept going. And then we took a picture of all of us, and then Hal Faden wasn't in any makeup or anything, and we're teasing him, calling him the UPS guy because his brown shirt on, and so then after that he went all red, put all red makeup on, and that was kind of it. Then we were kind of off and running in our little caricatures. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So let's see. What I remember when I interviewed all of you, and Dave, I forget his last name, Dave, from the director of The Dead Hate the Living. Yeah, he chose Lucio Fulci, the Italian splatter horror director. Right. Lucio Fulci. He died. We did a song tribute to him called Years of Blood. And Years of Blood. Yeah. Yeah, so he's a big Fulci fan, and so he changed his name to Lucifer Fulci. Right. And that's how he kind of got his name. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was asking about the guy who directed The Dead Hate the Living. He was also there. Oh, Dave Parker. Dave Parker, yes. Dave Parker. Yeah, Dave Parker, he was a good friend of ours. Yeah. He did, yeah, he did. He directed. You know what's funny is that we were rehearsing down the street in this house near downtown LA, and on the corner was this really cool looking old decrepit mansion. Nice. And I think they had been having like homeless people, like they were taking care of them, but they had like a board and care in there or something, but it was not there anymore. And so I'd gone over and I was like peeking in the windows of it and stuff, and there was no one in it. So we ended up breaking into the house to see what it was like inside, and it turned out it used to be one of Charlie Chaplin's mansions. Interesting. And that's the house that we got to do Tales of Terror. Oh, nice. Yeah, I love that video. yeah, and so we ended up doing working with Dave Parker, and he was really nice, you know, just a really nice guy, and really trying to start out on his own by making films and everything. And he really went on to do some fun stuff, you know. And he's still a friend of ours, and we got along with him really well. We did whatever he said, you know, and uh, pretty much that.
Yeah, I really loved that movie. I thought it was an excellent movie.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Were you guys in it, or did you just on the soundtrack?
We were in a video.
Right.
For it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that video.
We weren't in the movie. No.
The dead hate the living. Hate the living.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
the living. They want to kill the living.
Want to kill the living. I'm the world's biggest Venus flytrap fanboy. I'll be just out with it, you know. But so I have here. Okay, I just also remember you were saying that about the Gorgor dancers, that Rob Zombie was kind of like lurking, and he was taking notes or something. And
well, we played a show once for this. It was so funny. It was like this Mexican wrestling for this place in Hollywood, in this kind of this back room of this place, and I think the guy from Hollywood Book and Poster, Eric, was putting it on, and so he had the wrestling go on, and then he had us play. And when we were playing, we did see Rob Zombie there, and he did have a notepad. So I don't know what he was writing down, but we kind of thought that might have been it.
Yeah, I enjoy me some Rob Zombie, but every little piece of a Rob Zombie, whether it's his music or it's his films, is taken from somewhere else, and not in a kind of a like Quentin Tarantino way, but more like a outright theft way. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So, but that's neither here nor there. And okay, so you lived with Kenneth Anger. I mean, that's just so fucking awesome. Like, how did that happen?
His heart. I just adore him.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was years back, and when I was living in Hollywood, I had met at this vampire bazaar I had gone to. I had met Stanton LaVey, Anton LaVey's grandson.
Okay.
And he looked just like Anton. It's really kind of funny. But anyway, I met him and his girlfriend, and we struck up a friendship. We were going to see movies together and doing stuff. And anyway, he knew Ken, and he always called Ken, get this, his fairy godfather, because Ken's gay.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, I mean, I did know it, obviously, like his, like, you know, whatever, his, like, iconically, you know, gay.
Yeah. and so anyway, Ken knew Anton LaVey. Mm-hmm. And had lived with Anton at Anton's Black House at one point in time in San Francisco. And so Ken knew Anton well, and one day Stanton said, well, would you like to meet Ken? And I said, oh, I'd love to meet him. And so I was in walking distance to Musso and Frank's, this old, famous old Hollywood restaurant. It's been there for years.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why don't you come over and we'll all meet for dinner? And so I went and met them for dinner, and I met Ken, and later on, Stanton said to me, he goes, you know, Leslie, I've been with Ken a lot, and he goes, I've never seen him light up like he did when he met you. I go, really? And I said, well, that's so sweet. That's so nice of you to say. And so then I think I wrote to Ken or something, and he and Stanton had gotten into it over something, because, you know, Ken suffered from bipolar disorder.
Oh.
And he had to be hospitalized a few times for that. And I had just picked him up from this hospital out in Pasadena, and I was living in a loft downtown, and Stanton and his girlfriend were living with me in the loft.
I worked for Los Angeles Hospital.
Yeah, well, that's where he was.
Okay. Small world, yeah.
Yeah, that's where he was, and he was in there for a couple of weeks, I think in the back in some back place, but I love that place. It's so cool. Yeah, he had been taken to county hospital, and I went there, and he's like, "Get me out of here." So anyway, he ended up transferring over there, and so I had picked him up, and he still just wasn't in his right frame of mind, and he and Stanton had gotten into a big argument, and so
okay,
Ken left in the middle of the night and walked
I'm sorry. I have to. So, because I have brain trauma, I apologize. So you're talking about Kenneth Anger right now, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was at Los Angeles, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I don't think many people know that, but bless his heart. He struggled with that most of his life. He would always ask me, "Do I seem manic?"
Mm-hmm.
He'd go manic, and look out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some, there are rumors that would go around about Ken being this monster at times, and most of the time he's this very quiet, shy, unassuming individual, a hermit. But then there are times when he could be manic and, woo, look out, he'd be just talking incessantly and wanting to do things that, very risk-taking and very, I don't know, just spent money like it was going out of style. And
yeah.
So there were times when he really suffered. And so, but anyway, what I was going to tell you is that I had picked him up and brought him back to my loft, and he still needed to be, I guess, locked up because he still was acting very bizarre.
Yeah, sorry.
But he and Stanton got into a fight, and Stanton went and followed Ken home and wanted to call the police again to get him to come get him and take him back. And he got into he got into Ken's apartment, and Ken was a long time member of the OTO.
Right.
And
so that still existed, or it still exists? That's Crowley's group, right? Yeah.
I think it does. What does it stand for? Oriental or
Ordro Templo Orientalis.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, Ken was an 11th degree member of that society, and he had a handmade degree in a frame on a wall in his apartment, and Stanton took it. And so then started this huge kind of fight between the two of them. And Ken told me, he goes, they told me, the OTO told me that they'd never ever had to make a remake of an 11th degree, and here they had to make a remake for me because Stanton took it. And so Stanton at the time was mad at Ken, and so that's why he took it. They ended up making it up.
Okay,
but
I
think what happened was, at the time, I wrote to Ken, and he would always lay curses on people.
Huh.
And he even cursed me once. I have it in writing. I'm going to frame it sometime.
Nice.
But I wrote to him, and I wrote, "Cursed anyone lately?" to him, and he wrote back, "Cursed Stanton." And so that kind of started off our friendship, with just writing back and forth. And then before I knew it, he would ask me out to dinner, and then he'd ask me if I wanted to go see a movie. And so that really started our friendship. And I loved going out with him and going to movies. He was very quiet at first.
Really?
And very, I didn't quite know, I'm like, God, this is Ken Anger. What do I say to him, But as time went on, he just totally opened up, and he's a real sweetheart.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think you had asked me at one point about Jimmy Page and the music for Lucifer Rising. Ken met Jimmy Page in the 60s, I think, at an auction where they were auctioning off Aleister Crowley's books, and I don't know if his artwork or what, but Ken had started collecting his books too, but Ken never had money. But he met Jimmy Page, and Jimmy Page was living in one of Aleister Crowley's old houses called the Boleskine House,
Boleskine,
in Scotland.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's kind of how Ken met up with him, and he invited Ken to one of their massive concerts.
Oh, wow.
And Ken said that they had put him right in front of one of the speakers, and it made him mad. And I think he ended up leaving. But still, he had asked Jimmy Page if he would do some music for Lucifer Rising. And so Jimmy Page did, but he only did 20 minutes worth. And Ken needed like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if Jimmy Page didn't want to do anymore, or if Ken was just fed up because he only did 20 minutes. But then he ended up asking Bobby Beausoleil.
Right. From the Manson family.
And he lived with Bobby for a while in Haight-Ashbury area.
Wasn't he with the Manson family, or?
What happened was Ken and Bobby were living together in this old, it's called the Russian Embassy, this beautiful old place in the Haight-Ashbury area.
Yes.
And Bobby had taken Ken's van. Ken had a van. Ken didn't drive, but he had a van. I love it. Had taken Ken's van and drove it down to Southern California to pick up weed. And he bought a whole bunch of it. And he brought it back, and Ken thought he was going to buy musical equipment. And so here Bobby comes back, and he's got all this weed. Well, Ken freaks out because he's like, Bobby's younger than him. He's afraid that, they're going to find all this weed, and Ken's going to go to jail.
Right,
so he kicks Bobby out. And when he kicked Bobby out, Bobby had hitchhiked down, and he hitchhiked down right to where some of the Manson girls were.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so then he ended up kind of hanging out and being involved with their group for a while. And I think Bobby had been playing in the band Love for a while too.
Yeah.
And so Bobby also stole some of Ken's footage for Lucifer Rising. He supposedly buried it somewhere out in the desert near Spawn Ranch or something like that. That was always the rumor. But Ken was really irritated because he had stolen a bunch of his footage. And see, Bobby Beausoleil was going to be Lucifer in Lucifer Rising.
Okay.
And so when that happened, of course, then he didn't have a Lucifer anymore. And he had to get another one for the film. But so that's how Bobby got involved with them. I think he had been asked to go and kind of hustle Gary Hinman, who owed all these bikers some money because I guess he was the middleman between some bikers and the drugs, like the acid and stuff that they got for the Manson family. And supposedly it wasn't any good, and they wanted their money back. And, and that started this whole thing with Bobby going to kind of muscle these people. And that's what started that whole thing out. And then he ended up killing the guy, which that really wasn't Bobby. Bobby was the sweetie.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah, I remember because I have a copy of Apocalypse Culture 2 that has his artwork.
Oh, yeah. He does funny artwork.
Yeah, with like the winged penis and.
And the little fairies and
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
I used to visit him once in prison, but he said that he didn't want to visit him anymore. He goes, well, he can't go around killing people. Yeah,
that's not a lifestyle that you can sustain for. So as far as because I'm kind of curious. I've always been a little. I mean, I read the Satanic Bible. I don't know, and I did a lot of research on chaos magic, and but what the relationship, and also I wrote for. Do you know Hydra and Morningstar? at all?
No.
She did this thing. She was oh Peggy Nadramia, is that a name that rings a bell? It ran Gru magazine, and
No, I don't know.
yeah, so I mean, all these people are in Church of Satan, and Hydra Morningstar is actually a priestess in Church of Satan.
Oh, okay.
And she did this magazine called Infernal Inc. Right. I was in a bunch of issues, and she also she and this woman named Bertie Walker and I created something called Fucked Up Fairy Tales. And so it's a long, which and I'm very proud of that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make it about myself, but this is really actually really cool. It's a sort of like X-rated kind of, fairy tales, and the whole premise was like this, the Princess Cherry Pop, my character, was sort of, she's being constantly sort of like a Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd relationship between her and the Baroness Nair, who's constantly trying to get a hold of her. The power she has, Princess Cherry Pop has the power of the pussy, which is a sort of a hereditary thing that was given to her by the goddess Twatsapooner. Right? I see you're chuckling. I mean, for a lot of people, it would be like, what did he just say? Oh my God! This man is a menace to society.
That's funny.
And thank you. And so we actually got Bill Plimpton to do one of our covers. So and there was interest from HBO at one point. I can only just imagine what that would look like.
Yeah. I think what happens with this phone is that the battery is kind of going low, and then the cord all of a sudden says, "Oh, the attachment isn't good," so it does that sound. I'm really sorry.
No worries at all. Yeah, I mean, I know some people with, like, autism and audio processing disorders and things like that might get to them, but I don't particularly. So I'm kind of curious what you think, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about Satanism, and I had a friend, well, it's a former friend now because he kind of threw me under the bus, but Don Webb, who ran the Temple of Set.
Yeah.
And he kind of did me dirty, but recently. But what is your, like? I mean, I know a little bit about like LaVeyan Satanism, but how would you describe it to somebody who had no knowledge?
LaVeyan Satanism?
Yeah.
Did you ever read the book Might is Right?
Oh yeah, the whatever. Yeah, wasn't it kind of like a white supremacist or something, or?
Yeah, I think LaVey took a lot of his ideas, and I may be wrong. Don't quote me on that. No, but I kind of felt like with LaVey, he was a carny first, playing organ at carnivals. And is an amazing organ player. And he, I guess he ended up wanting to make money, and he was a showman, and he decided that he was going to start this religion. And I don't know where he called his information from, but after I was in a group that was very Celtic, very balanced, not chaotic in any way. And so I had read a lot, and then when I read some of his stuff, I thought it was just very simplistic. And but that was my take on it. Right. Now Ken, who had lived with Anton, was not. He never was a Satanist, and it's only an occultist. Yeah. And so. And people would think that, Ken Anger, he's a Satanist, and he's the devil himself, and and he's got Lucifer tattooed on his chest, and all this stuff. Yeah. But Ken looked at that as Lucifer, as the bringer of light, and Ken's medium with his work is light.
Right.
And so that's where he came from, all of that. But you know, I read probably about 4 or 5 LaVey books, and you know, a lot of it I kind of felt like it was almost anarchy kind of philosophy. And that I liked about it, because I've always felt like I was an anarchist, if anything, Native American anarchist.
Right.
And but that's about all I know about LaVey and his whole movie.
Yeah, I mean,
I met Diane LaVey,
right,
and had dinner with her, and she was very nice. And but apart from that, I never really got into Satanism, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's different, like, I guess there's always the sort of the Hollywood image, and it's very stereotyped, and you know, people think of, like, they'll think of things like the Black Cat, the Boris Karloff film, and which but you know what's interesting to me is sort of like that there's always this kind of this byplay between sort of like, I don't know if you would say it's like queer, it's sort of a queer aesthetic, and horror films. I mean, from the very beginning, there's been this kind of, and in going back to, you know, Bram Stoker himself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's so obvious just reading. I did a paper on for grad school. Went to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I did actually I did my master's thesis on queer theory, but I did a paper from my Victorian lit class on the queer Dracula, you know. And it's so, I mean, once you start to look at it with that eye, it's all over the place, you know. Like Dracula is this sort of, he's inverted from normal reality. You know, he sleeps during the day, right? He sleeps in a coffin, right? He's undead, and there's all these aspects of it. And I think, and also like working with, you know, with David J. Haskins, and sort of, you know, getting his take on that character, and the sort of like the not so subliminal sexual, you know, shenanigans with, you know, with Bauhaus, you know what I mean? Like, which I mean, I absolutely adore Bauhaus. I'm, you know, doing a Bauhaus tribute anthology. So that's one of my things that I'm doing, which, you know, yeah, I mean, and I would, you know, if you'd ever do creative stuff, or I don't know, like any writing or any poetry or anything, because I would love to have you on board.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, because I have, you know, Carrie Chrome is part of it, and, you know, also, I mean, speaking of Carrie, you know, like, we're doing a magazine called, she wanted to call it Blammo, because, like, she's obsessed with like cherry bombs and stuff like that, you know, hence the song, right? and I'm like, Carrie, Blammo already exists, and she's like, I want to call it Blammo, and I was like, well, I said it already exists, Carrie, and so we settled on Blam, but she keeps trying to reset the needle back to Blammo. So and Blammo is kind of, it's sort of like Mad Magazine. It's dumb pranks. It's hooliganism. It's being because she thinks of herself as like this teenage delinquent or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think of like Carrie Lee Combs like hanging out behind the pool hall smoking cigarettes with her peg leg like jeans
Mm-hmm.
and looking just looking like a punk, right?
Yeah.
And I love her. I consider her my lil sis, even though she's a bit older than me. But so if you
okay.
if you would, that works, right? If you would be interested, or tell your friends, because we're trying to get we wanted to get like Tequila Mockingbird involved with this thing. Do you know Tequila Mockingbird?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she shares my stuff from time to time. So just tell your friends we're doing something called Blam, and it's basically it's like true life accounts of pranks, of like idiotic, like drunken vomiting, of
Mm-hmm.
just hooliganism, of just stupid shit. And everybody has stories, when you're talking, you're partying or whatever, you're having a good time, you start to tell
Mm-hmm.
stories, right? So the idea would be to get those down on in print.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, just if you can share with your friends, if you have any stories along those lines. It doesn't have to be like all professional. In fact, the whole idea is to, like John Waters. I love John
Mm-hmm.
Waters, right? And he said like like the whole idea about art is like to ruin it, just to wreck it, right?
Yeah. I love John Waters.
And actually, you should really see his movie, um, um, Cecil B. Demented,
Oh yeah, I do want to see that.
because there's this one kid that all the like they kidnap, um what's her name, Melanie Griffith,
Uh-huh.
um all
Okay, I'll have to see that.
all Patty Hearst, right? And
Yeah.
they're all like underground filmmakers, and they all have the names of their favorite filmmakers on their tattooed on their arms, and like
Mm-hmm.
Jodorowsky, and then Kenneth Anger, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's hysterically funny.
It sounds funny. I gotta see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of it. I just never got to see it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh yeah, and speaking of like, there's a lot of synchronicities that happen in my life, but particularly recently. Like
Mm-hmm.
my best friends, two of my best friends that I'm doing, like when I do this, my publishing, um, it's a imprint. It's called Nocturnicorn Books,
Mm-hmm.
and I have these two friends who are mostly Native American, named Mary Genevieve Fortier and David Schutz, and there's this couple down in St. Louis, and we were accused a long time ago of being in cahoots together. So
Oh.
so ever since, I've called everything I do a cahoots venture. Right. Right. And it's sort of making fun of the people who were like using that against us, right? And
Oh, that's great.
and also my girlfriend is also a Native American, and very spiritual, very into energy work. So there's a lot of, like, I have a lot of affinities with the goddess. With
Mm-hmm.
with like, I had this friend Karen Crisis. Karen Crisis.
No.
Well, she did this. She's very, very interesting person. She was with this hardcore metal band in New York called Crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and she's this whirling dervish, this kind of, she's really short and slight. She looks like a skater boy,
Mm-hmm.
and she's got this angelic face with these long, dreads, and these tattoos all down her legs. And she's very like, and she has this this huge voice. It sounds like this demon, it's like Evil Dead or something, and stuff. So, and she became a witch. She discovered that her witch heritage, that she was actually an Italian witch, part of the Strega.
Oh, wow.
So I would kind of recommend to check her out. And then another friend of mine who I was with, I did something called Juggernaut magazine back in the 90s. And so I had like Karen Crisis on the cover, and then the second one was and actually I had the Blue Blood people do my cover for the second one with Terry B. Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Terry B. Murphy?
I've heard of Terry B. Murphy, yeah.
Yeah, and Terry is also like, she's Italian, and she's a witch too. We have this weird affinity with Italian witches. I don't know why. Interesting, right? And also, like, and it sounds like I'm pitching, like I'm trying to sell you things, but I just finished a dark poetry collection with my good friend Sandy De Luca, and it's very, very witchy, and she's this incredible poet and artist, and it's called, well, it's called The Flowers of Doom. But also we had two things. One was like the one was this dark.
And it's extremely metal too. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the rhythms of it, obviously I've listened to a lot of that metal when I was writing it. The rhythms are like turning like that. And they also have music. So this is very, very kind of metal. They even have a song, right? The Jason X song. So it's fun. They do a good job.